can you figure out a feedback loop to make the system smarter over time? Maybe you want to get it down to 30 minutes or to 10 minutes driven by AI and then scale it across all the employees. Then you get into the agentic mode, which is now the AI operates standalone. And then basically your company can get into a management by exception. So that's why we need AI, which will take away the boring work so you can be happy and then we can continue building a successful business.
There is so much AI hype out there when business leaders just want to know, how do they cut through the noise to find the true efficiency gains? Do they build? Do they buy? How do they know what to choose? How do you even know where to apply AI in the first place? Well, in episode 61 of Tool Use, brought to you by ToolHive, we're solving all of this and more. We're joined by Csongor Barabasi, the founder and CEO of Bonsai Labs. They work with private equity firms as the AI value creation partner, deploying AI across all their portfolio companies. So he has a lot of experience on how to actually use AI for operational efficiency. So please enjoy this conversation with Csongor.
I feel that agents has been the talk almost from day one of ChatGPT. Everyone was talking about agents. For me, at some point, it also felt like this is an overhyped word and it's like a buzzword that everyone is using. Because ultimately, if you boil down what an agent is just a sequence of LLM calls. There is nothing very complex or rocket science about it, right? You could be an agent by just copy pasting a prompt, getting an output, putting it into the next prompt, doing that again. But nevertheless, even this orchestration, you could say, of LLM, that led to an agentic behavior. And what I realized over time is that really when we call them agents, it's just a very creative way of how you piece together LLM calls. And over the last 6 months, we have seen articles coming out from Anthropic as well on how to build agents and what are different agentic patterns that you could be leveraging. For example, a self-reflecting pattern where you generate the output, have another LLM, reflect on that, give feedback, and then generate again. So ultimately, these are all just smart ways of how we piece together LLM calls so that we get to the desired output. That is an agent for me. And then if it can get to a level that it can replace a process within a business or a whole job function, then we start talking about these digital employees. That was also very famous and on the rise a lot, because ultimately an agent could get a whole job function done.
And to get to that point, what type of safety considerations, reliability, even human in the loop, what's required to get it to the point where you can say, hey, I have a digital employee now versus just a script that someone will run and monitor?
Great question. Where could we start? There are a lot of considerations to be had. The first consideration is around data security and safety. So where does this agent live? What data does it interact with? The outputs of the agent, are they customer facing? And if they are, then are they exposed to some regulatory requirements? Or is just internal facing? And does it have a significant business impact if the output of the agent is right or wrong? So you have all these considerations around compliance, safety, data security. Then the second question is, of course, you want to define what the agent does. And usually you tie back the agent to a job function, a business process within your company. So then you want to make sure that you outline all the process very, very clearly, and you understand that. So when you start building your agent, then the agent has clear objectives and knows the systems that it has to integrate with. So the second one is just understanding the process. Afterwards, when you want to implement an agent, the question is, what is its success criteria? How do you know that it performs? And it's the same question as you would be asking about an employee. How do you know that your team member performs? How do you know that they are on track? And there it comes about setting up an evaluation data set, which can be maybe as simple as an input and an expected output, so that you can use this evaluation data set while you are developing the agent and you can benchmark yourself against it. And you can see the progress of starting maybe at a 20% success rate in the beginning and growing up towards 80% and onwards. And once you have these mechanisms in place, then it's all about quick iteration, weekly iteration, building out your agent, testing it against the evaluation set. And once you feel confident, then putting it in real life. And of course, businesses have different bars on one, like when the agent is ready to go production. If the agent is exposed to your end customers, has the possibility to damage your brand. damage your customer relationship, then the bar ultimately is higher. If it's an internal process, then the bar often tends to be lower. And when you want to launch an agent, we have this like framework of how do you get to a truly fully agentic behavior where you can just like fire and forget about it and the work will be done. And that's not like an overnight process. Usually the way you start is first you build a co-pilot experience for your human team members, which is basically augmenting their work and helping them do the work better. And then you can see that this augmentation, is it helpful for their day-to-day work or not? Like, do they approve the suggestion or not? And this helps you to collect data. So once you get to a confidence level where the human is approving enough suggestions, then you get into a human in the loop where you flip basically the seats. So before the human was in control, the AI was the co-pilot. Now the AI is in control, the human is the co-pilot or the reviewer and the gatekeeper. And then once you feel confident enough that 99% of the cases are all passed and accepted by the human, that 1% is successfully flagged for further review, then you get into the agentic mode, which is now the AI operates standalone. And then basically your company can get into a management by exception setup where the AI is doing its work. Whenever there is an exception, a low confidence score, it's surfaced back to the human team and it's being reviewed.
One thing I'd like to touch on is I love the idea of progressing from co-pilot to agent and just like that transition through there. What do you recommend in terms of strategies or systems set up so that the collection of the data to know when it performs well or makes a mistake is stored in such a way that it's actually useful, where we're not just saying an arbitrary audit log of all the thumbs up, thumbs down, but actually saying when this action occurred, this was incorrect, this was a desired behavior, and then somehow feed that back in the system. Like, do you have any strategies or approaches for that?
I think what you have described is the right mentality to have in terms of how can you figure out a feedback loop to make the system smarter over time. But if there is like a one size fits all approach, I don't think there is, because every single use case has a different way to evaluate it and has a different way of data structure and then a different way of data collection. But we can like dig into one example, which is the most common one around everyone wants a better agent to write emails, right? For example, we have agents for writing sales emails. We have agents like companies like Fixer who are managing our inbox. And we want that AI agent to have a better draft for us. Now, how this data loop can look for you is that the AI agent writes the first draft, and then it's monitoring whether you have accepted the draft or you have made changes. If you have accepted, that's great. If you have made changes, then the new changed and improved version is considered the success version. And then what is possible behind the scenes over time is that next time you encounter a new email that you have to draft, you can do a vector search among all your historical emails that you have written and to see which are the similar topics, conversation styles, let's say a meeting booking exchange. Find some of the similar past email topics and emails that have been written, and then choose a couple examples and put it in as context into your LLM call. So that basically you are telling the LLM, in the past, these were some examples which has been approved and which was successful. So follow this similar pattern to write the email again. So this way, the feedback loop improves. And then also you can shorten your search based on a time horizon. Don't look back for 3 years, because likely my writing style have evolved 3 years ago compared to 6 months ago. And you can have all these mechanisms in place.
Nice. And I feel like there's even a more simplistic version, maybe not for something as broad as email, but just storing the golden data set, like an ideal example, and even just feeding that into the LLM call as here are some examples of successful ones, like mimic, take as inspiration and go from there.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Do you, besides writing emails, do you have any other common use cases where businesses should start trying to create this golden data set and they can say, this is how the best human at our company does a certain task. Let's store this, and then we can feed into an AI system when it's ready.
I would say every AI system should have a golden data set in place. The reason is that building systems with large language models is not a deterministic process. The answer is stochastic. Is even just like one extra space in the prompt will yield to a slightly different outcome than it was before. So it's really critical to have an evaluation data set in place, because this then enables you as an engineering team, as a product team, to iterate faster. If you have confidence in your in your testing set, then you can quickly iterate, run it against the benchmark, and see if it works. I can give you some other examples which we have been setting up in terms of evaluation. So we have done a lot of work in legal tech, for example, building AI agents for the legal service industry. And there it's extremely hard to set up evaluation sets, especially for the answer generation. Like, how do you judge if an answer is right? We have had more success around the document retrieval side of setting up evaluation, because we know that for one question, what are the relevant documents that should be retrieved? So at least we can benchmark that with a simple precision and recall metric. Other examples, we have been, for example, parsing invoices and parsing documents for accounting. Again, there is straightforward how to set up a data set, because you have line items that you want to extract. Then you want to make sure that all those line items are found after your LLM call or OCR call has happened.
And one thing I want people to consider too is that you don't just need to build this golden data set when you're building your own systems. Like, even if you buy an off-the-shelf solution, having these ideal use cases can still be fed in. Could we touch on that, the build versus buy debate? What's your usual approach when you recommend people? Like, is there everything custom, or do you recommend certain tools that people can just, go online and pick up themselves?
A great question. I definitely wouldn't recommend that build everything custom. And there are a couple of considerations to be made. The first consideration is whether is there anyone who can maintain a custom software in the future? Do you have an engineering team? Are you planning to hire an engineer? Even just one engineer, but are you planning to invest in that? That's the first question. And if the answer is a categoric no, then you could just look at buy. The second part, where you have the optionality of like potentially having an engineering team in the future, and let's say you want to buy a product for operational efficiency. And what we have seen for legacy businesses, they have some processes which are really difficult to change. And in that case, often when you buy an off-the-shelf solution, then the off-the-shelf solution already has a pre-made concept in terms of how to use it and the process. And then it often becomes really hard to fit together the bought product and the company processes. So in that scenario, also, it's worth considering then to build your solution, especially that right now building software is becoming faster than ever, which means if it's faster, then it's also cheaper than ever. And then there will be some, let's say, integrations around the AI system, which will not be a core differentiation for you in the future, or will not be your mode. And then sometimes it's just not worth to build out all that complexity when it's not related to your core differentiation. One example is voice AI agents. You can implement voice AI agents in your business, but now is it worth it to implement the whole infrastructure end-to-end by yourself, meaning text-to-speech, speech-to-text, turn-taking detection, normalization, background sound removal, and all that? It takes years of effort and millions of dollars of R&D investment. So there are already companies who have invested tens of millions even, and they only do this exceptionally well. In that case, it just makes sense to buy it off the shelf, and then you could integrate this off-the-shelf product with some other custom elements that you have built. So these are roughly the various scenarios that we consider. Fundamentally, it's one question is this a core differentiator for you in the future? Is it worth investing money into that and own the IP in-house? And the second one is, you have an engineering team, an R&D team, or you would rather just get something off the shelf. Now there is actually another aspect which is coming to play now that I remember, is that with some software, especially in the enterprise setting, it might sound like a great idea to buy a software off the shelf. Let's say for a performance review management software, you would buy Lattice, and you will have to pay $200,000 per year for licenses due to the number of employees you have. In this scenario is also a question, how about you just vibe code it internally, then you make it production ready, and then you build it once, you invest once, maybe 50K or 100K even, but then you own it forever. And beyond that, you can also tailor it and customize it to your own processes. And also what we observe in this situation, that companies, most of the time, they only use a very small subset of the software just a feature which they over-index on, and all the rest is ignored. So why would you pay so much money for those licenses where you could just extract that feature maybe in 2 weeks with a small internal team? And this is a new evolving model that we see.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because one thing that I find very exciting about this new space is just with the importance of data, the ability to vibe code up data pipelines and integrations has really like lowered the bar. Where even if you get certain types of software, one example I use Granola during meetings, but then you can pipe it into Zapier, and then that can go everywhere, and I can put it into my Obsidian Vault, so I can take information and then run Cloud Code over my Obsidian Vault, actually get intelligent insights on my notes, make connections. There's so much ways that you can amplify and enhance existing software with just like small little additions to the systems that we have available to us. Also at Box One Ventures, I've been teaching the team how to build up their own dashboard. So like we have an internal system, but I've exposed internal API, and now they don't have to ask me, hey, can you build a dashboard for X?
Yep.
They can build it themselves, interface with the real data. It's so exciting.
Amazing.
Do you see any other trends with how small non-technical teams can start leveraging AI to get more customized in their workflows?
What you have outlined actually sounds like the best practice that I have seen as well. So the way we think about this is that within a company, if employees all get access to ChatGPT, to Claude's desktop, whatever it would be, and they only have access to that almost like a single player mode way of working with AI. But our work is often multiplayer, and multiplayer could mean interacting with various people, interacting with various tools and softwares, and pulling data together, and then running the insights. So the system that you have set up at Box One is incredible, and it really aligns with what we see as well. On one end, for the multiplayer modes, you need an orchestration layer. You mentioned Zapier. We are a big fan of N8N. We actually just became an accredited partner of N8N as well. So we recommend to set up N8N, give your team access, let them play around with workflows. And the other one is also we have seen the AI app, be it your ChatGPT desktop, your Claude desktop, almost becoming like a control panel, because you can connect through MCP various external applications. Like you are connecting your Obsidian probably via an MCP, and then you can quickly query it and then do more things on top of the data. These are the two patterns we have been seeing.
Nice. And just to double click on MCP, do you see any risks or considerations people should take into account before they spin up their own, where they might want to expose their own internal data via MCP servers? So for example, you don't have to write an API client to interface with the database. You can just have your MCP, so you can chat with Claude or ChatGPT. Do you have any best practices there?
Probably not yet best practices. We haven't built enough MCP servers to get to a best practice level where we can define this. But what we have seen is that the Anthropic team is already making improvements to the MCP library in the sense of improved security. You have authentication as well that you can have at hand, and also improving the way that you can roll out MCP server updates if you have it across the organization and you have multiple Claude desktop users. That's one. And the other one is we also see some startups which are rising to fame, both backed by YC and also some in Europe, which give you this like secure MCP container all in one. So you just like push your code. And you can also host the MCP server locally and make sure that it only works within your VPC. These are some of the best practices that we have been seeing.
When you use MCP in your business processes, you got to give it access to real data and systems, and that can be scary. And that's why I recommend ToolHive. ToolHive makes it simple and secure to use MCP. It includes a registry of trusted MCP servers. It lets me containerize any other server with a single command. I can install it in a client in seconds, and secret protection and network isolation are built in. You can try ToolHive as well. It's free and it's open source, and you can learn more at toolhive.dev. Now back to the conversation with Csongor. So on top of MCP exposing the data, one thing I think people need to pay attention to is how they actually store their data, because not everything is structured. Sometimes things are just in a Word document or in a PDF. Do you have any recommendations for how companies, whether like brand new startups or more established enterprises, can start thinking about how they store and structure their data so that it's optimized as they start implementing more AI systems?
Yeah, great question. And there have been also some statistics around, I don't remember the exact number, but just the sheer amount of data sitting in unstructured format within enterprises is gigantic compared to the structured data. Ultimately, it's not very different from conducting a simple data transformation work where you have your data source, you define the desired format that you want your data source to be in, and then you do the transformation in between. The only thing that changed is that previous to LLMs, we couldn't do transformation of unstructured data reliably, right? But right now we can. We can process call transcripts, Word documents. So the question is, define your problem. For your problem, what is the data that you need? And then look for where can you get the data from and build out the transformation in between. Now, for this transformation, LLMs can be very powerful. And for example, you could take a PDF or a Word document, just get the text, pass it into an LLM and parse it. If your PDF is scanned, we have seen that Mistral OCR seems to be the best performing OCR model currently. So you can pass your PDF through this, or you could also pass each page of the PDF as an image into an LLM, like maybe Google Gemini 2.5 Flash. You can also process Excel files. With Excel files, still a bit tricky with LLMs. Again, what you can do, take a screenshot of the one tab in the Excel, send it as an image. LLM is pretty good at describing to you the content or getting back to you with insights. And then based on this, you transform the data, put it in a relational database, and then the rest is all the same as so far.
Nice. I'd like to pivot slightly because one blind spot I have is I've been in tech for a decade. A lot of the companies we talk to are tech, but there's so many non-technical companies out there, or just like slightly technical, that I worry the gap between productivity of us technical companies that are leveraging AI for as many systems as possible and the non-tech who just aren't even aware of what's available is just going to continue to expand. And we need to make sure everyone kind of benefits from this technology. So I believe you've recently had some experience deploying AI agents in the fire safety vertical. Would you mind talking about some of the experience there, how the process went, things to look out for? Just what helpful tips could someone who's not a techie person or not in a techie industry get to benefit from AI?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would say indeed, companies who are more technical have an edge, but it's easy to close that gap for non-technical teams as well. The simplest way how you can get started is just to start using AI and start using the tools that you have out there. Start using ChatGPT on a daily basis. And there, the most common blocker that we see is that despite that people have access to ChatGPT, let's say, they don't know how to use it. And then it leads to frustration. And we hear the common complaint of like, until I could have figured this out, I would have done it like 10 times already. And I would typically agree. Yes, you could have. But have you thought about all the other 1,000 times that you have to do the same thing in the future? Have you accounted for that? Usually the answer is no. So the first step where companies should start is just give ChatGPT to your users or Claude Desktop, whichever it would be, and either offer them a way to like an AI training session, a prompt engineering training session, and like get everyone to a base level to feel comfortable with this tool. I would say this is where you start. And this also ties into a framework which we see for companies who want to adopt AI, that it's not all about like technology only, as we have been talking so far, like we have been super technical, but it's also about people and the process transformation. And this is where we believe that a company really succeeds in becoming AI native or AI driven as an organization when they pay equal attention to all the three buckets of people, process, and product. So with people, it's simple. You just give them the tools and let them to learn it, to use it. And also, one thing which we not account for enough is give them psychological safety to have the motivation and the will to try the AI tools and to use it. Because if the attitude towards the AI system is that, oh, this will come and take my job, well, I better resist as much as I can, that will not lead very far down the line. So this has to come from the leadership team to set the psychological safety within the company of like, hey guys, we are not going to let you go. This is not the reason why we want you to use AI. Our ambition, for example, maybe is to grow the company, and we want to grow, but we do not want to grow the team as well. We just want to grow the business. Or it's like, guys, we saw that you are burnt out. We just want to somehow find a way to take away the boring, the busy work from your day-to-day so that you can really do your happiest work in this company. So that's why we need AI, which will take away the boring work so you can be happy and like we can continue building a successful business. And then you have the other side, which is the process. where it's about like you identify the process where you want to implement AI. Of course, you have to have very clear understanding of that process, map it out in a process map. Once you have automated it, it's not enough to just automate it and tell everyone, hey, this is ready, this is the new process. It requires constant reinforcement, or we call it like change management, where you work together with the teams to train them on the new process, offer weekly office hours where they can come and they can ask questions, offer them a direct and an easy gateway where they can report if things are not working, or they are not happy with certain parts of the process, or maybe they have ideas for improvement, because ultimately these people will be your end users for the deployed AI system. And after all of this, like technology is there as underpinning, which just empowers it all. But it's not the top of mind that you should be talking about with your people every day. You should only be talking about the people and the process. Technology will empower it all.
Yeah, that's a wonderful perspective. So many people need to remember that change is scary for many people. And especially with the doom and gloom you hear on the news as to AI is going to wipe out jobs and displace so many people. The thought of it coming in being like, hey, how do you do your job? We're going to have AI work alongside you is definitely intimidating. But if you can reassure them that this is going to take away the drudgery of your job, allow you to be more creative, allow you to focus on other things, you can grow, expand, learn into a new role, or even just become much more efficient at your current role, where instead of being able to deal with X number of tasks, you can deal with double the amount of tasks without getting the extra burnout. To build on that, one thing that I found really interesting, just use my dad as an example. Told him about ChatGPT way back in the day, brushed it off, didn't really think about it. But then I introduced him to Suno, the music generator. He took all of his old songs, made them into like new songs. It was really cool. And then I introduced him to Perplexity as just like the next step, being like, instead of using Google, just to try Perplexity. Now he uses ChatGPT on the regular because it was an incremental progress of like play and enjoyment rather than just, hey, this will make you more productive. Have at it. It's a lot less appealing that way. So I encourage people, as I've done a bunch of other episodes, as mentioned a bunch of other episodes, just play, like explore. Like there's so many cool things out there that if you can just kind of get past that fear of the uncertain, that we're entering a new age when all of a sudden like we put electricity through sand and then we get intelligence out of it. It's pretty miraculous. It's going to be a net positive. It's just there are growing pains, and we just have to try to work on change management so that we bring everyone along for the ride.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I would love to go into process a little bit more, because that's one area that really interests me. Do you have any strategies for the initial collection, like the documentation of a process? Should someone just like stand over someone's shoulder and write down the work that they do? Should we try to implement some type of tracking software? Or what is a low friction way that we can start documenting these processes so we have step 0 for process automation?
The simplest way how we start is just interviewing the team members or watching over their shoulder and spending a day or two with them and seeing how they work. It is as simple as that. We have been doing process mapping, and like consulting has been around for many, many tens of years, right? And they have been doing process mapping, looking at the process, reworking it. This time is no different at all. The only critical part is just to have full clarity and really deeply understand the process. Many people that we see just like quickly jump to a solution. Like, oh, we understand the high process. Let's now build AI agents and let's now build the tools. And you are missing the nuance and the detail. And then, for example, with external parties like ourselves, the client really feels unheard. If you just come to them, like they speak for 5 minutes and you're like, oh yeah, got it. Let's now build AI. So it's also the part of like, sure, understanding the process, but also showing the client that you really get their business and their context and their domain. And also do not think that if you automated a process once is the same across every company. It's actually different for every single company because there are cultural values, cultural nuances, ways that people work differently. And all this has to be taken into account.
Yeah, and that kind of rings true with, I guess it's not that recent anymore, but there was an article about how 90% of AI projects failed. And what's really unclear is, were these people just being like, hey, let's try this one product and just like through it without really auditing if it was the right tool for the job? What do you recommend for people for selecting the right tool for the job when there are millions out there? They seem to really overlap. Like, does ChatGPT do everything? Like, how do people figure out what tool they actually need?
I think the article that you have mentioned is actually the reason why those failed is because they weren't clear around what they are automating. I have a great friend in San Francisco, and he told me once that in San Francisco, the thinking is that technology is never a problem. The only problem is your business model. And now if we translate this to the process, technology is never a problem. The only problem is you are unclear about what process you are automating and what is the ROI that you want to achieve and you want to drive. So I would say that 95% of those pilots, they were all unclear and they were just building sexy AI agents just for the sake of technology. But actually they had zero clarity around what is the business value that will be delivered. So then ultimately when the POC phase is done, they will realize, oh, there is no business case, so let's just shelve. What we do is we have often just told our clients that I'm sorry, we just cannot work on this product because there is no ROI. We just don't understand what is the ROI. And usually it ties back to improving your margins, driving top line, somehow back to the EBITDA and P&L impact, or the overall EV of the enterprise value of the company. And if we cannot see that, we don't even get started on that work because it's a failed project and a failed initiative from the get-go. By the time you could have the sexiest implementation, but there is no business case, then the client will be unhappy. If the client is unhappy, we will also not be happy because it means we didn't do our job well and they consider that we did a poor job. Yeah, so that's what I would recommend. It's just really be critical around what is the ROI, drive it back to the dollar value. And if the dollar value outweighs of the ROI outweighs the investment, just go for it. That is a no-brainer.
Do you have any advice or techniques around measuring ROI for AI? Because I'm just thinking, if we give everyone a ChatGPT subscription, how can we? And I know there's such a wide range, so I'm thinking more generally. But how can we make sure that the whatever $30 a month that you commit to a subscription pays for itself? Do we try to say employee satisfaction, output? Are there other things we should try to take into account? Because you mentioned burnout earlier. If we can have people deliver the same amount of output, but there's less burnout, that seems something cool. But how do we measure that?
Great question. I think justifying ROI for just the ChatGPT subscription, it's probably a bit harder and not so tangible. Maybe you can measure it back to like the employee satisfaction, for example. But as I said, like that's a single player mode. And so with ChatGPT Access, you are not yet playing the game of becoming an AI native company. You are just doing the table stakes, which is absolutely mandatory for everyone to do. It's just the foundations. So you are not better or more successful just because you have ChatGPT subscription. This is now table stakes. I think the unlock comes afterwards when you get into the multiplayer processes and the ways to really automate the process end to end. That's when you can dig into ROIs. For example, just clocking of how long does it take to complete this piece of work. Let's say if you are in the legal industry and you are doing legal research, you can clock that same research takes 2 hours for you. Now the challenge is that you will do the ROI based on the hourly rate of the person, and then maybe you want to get it down to 30 minutes or to 10 minutes driven by AI, and then scale it across all the employees and like how many hours the organization is spending on that. And then you can start weighting ROI versus the investment that is required. So this is how I would tie it back. Yeah, that's mostly what we see.
What about for you personally? What AI tools do you leverage or have you implemented to help make yourself more productive as you go about your day?
That changes constantly because these AI tools just get better and better every single week. So my go-to LLMs at the moment are Grok. I'm testing Claude, but with Claude, mainly Claude Code, and OpenAI, ChatGPT. These are my go-to LLMs. Then in terms of orchestration, I have a personal NA10 instance, so I can automate as much as possible there. Whenever there is a repetitive flow that I find, then I can automate that with NA10. And I have been just testing, actually there is another one, Granola. I'm a big fan of Granola, using it end to end. They just released a super exciting feature, which is around chatting with all your nodes and then getting weekly summaries. So I think the team is just doing an absolutely amazing work in improving their product. I'm a big Notion user. Now they have Notion AI, so that also makes life easier. And I think that is pretty much all I use. And Whisper, actually, yeah. I use Whisper. for dictation, sometimes just writing the long prompts, it just takes ages, and more happy to just speak it out loud.
Yeah, as someone who works from home, I talk to my computer far more than I type. Especially now that I've heavily integrated Cursor and Claude Code into my workflow, I will just tell it the prompt, read the output, make a couple little changes, get back to prompting with my voice again, and it just, the bandwidth difference is phenomenal. You are not the first person to bring up NA10, and as someone who's been developed for so long, I have an aversion to it just because I want to write my own stuff. But I've heard a lot of good things. Could you talk about some of your use cases for NA10 and when it is a benefit to that instead of trying to write a Python script?
Yeah, of course. Well, you can write a Python script and have it in NA10 as a node. So you can, that's the beauty of NA10. So I think Zapier, I find Zapier to be very just end user, user experience focused and not very developer friendly or low level. While with NA10, you could go into the low levels as an engineer if you want to write custom scripts. So that's an advantage. You can also build your own custom nodes in NA10. I think a big one for companies and especially larger companies and enterprises is self-hosting. So you can host it on your own servers, make sure that the data never leaves. Then there is an advantage of NA10, and this is similar to Zapier and all the rest of the tools that they just have like thousands of integrations out of the box. So why bother with a Gmail integration, an Outlook integration, a Google Drive integration? I wouldn't want to write that and code that from scratch. I'm more than happy for NA10 to handle it. I think these are some of the reasons. And also, we are very excited about the impact of AI in the professional services industry. And the professional services companies just don't have the engineering bandwidth or the engineering teams to maintain code bases. So NA10 for them, it's a great fit because they can automate the workflows, maintain with very low engineering effort, and still they get the benefit of a fully built software.
Csongor, this was a lot of fun. Before we let you go, is there anything you want the audience to know?
I'm curious from your end, what AI tools you are using. Besides, you mentioned Cursor, Claude Code, you are talking a lot with your computer. What else?
Yeah, so I have Claude Desktop running for my main chat interface. I still use OpenAI from time to time, but more so for deep research only. I actually do Perplexity for guest research, so I'll do a quick tell me about the certain guest. I use Aqua Voice as my transcriber. I used to use Super Whisper, but I migrated to Aqua Voice when it allows you to have the option of doing a screen input at the same time. So it can actually get context from your screen. So if you're talking to someone with an unusual name or you're doing code, it'll actually do the function name the way it's written in your code rather than just verbatim what you say.
Interesting.
I use Obsidian for my notes. I'm a big fan of the file over app principle. And because it's just a collection of markdown files, I can have Claude Code running in that directory to create custom dashboards for me, as well as things like the very robust plugin ecosystem. So I can do a data view plugin and actually have code operate across my notes where I can say like, get all of the unmarked to-dos that are due in the next week and put them in a list.
Oh,
that's
cool.
been a lot of fun. Cursor is my main interface for coding. I've tried the different tools. I just found I keep kind of migrating back to Cursor. It's not perfect, but it's good enough for me. I was big into NeoVim for a while, but now that I just type less because I'm speaking so much, I still use my Vim bindings, but it's just less of a requirement for me to have that like ultra efficient control over my computer. Around the podcast, I use Descript for editing. I use Canva for the thumbnails. I feel like that's it. I'll let you know if there's more, but yeah, I try to audit every tool that I'm using and seeing if there's an AI alternative, test them out. Some of them, it's AI for AI's sake. It doesn't add any actual value, just increases the price of it. But some of them, you actually get a minor bit of efficiency here. And like I was emphasizing earlier, the ability to pipe data from one system into a core repository, I think is under-indexed in this day and age. And I think creating your second brain, having well-structured, well-formatted data that you can feed into an AI system is going to pay massive dividends sooner than most people realize. So I really hope more people get into the data hoarding, data harvesting stage and just start saying, I write emails on the regular. How can I start storing the gems? Or you put out a banger tweet. How can you start building your data set of things that go viral for the model that will help you go viral more often?
I like that. Storing and building up your own data set. That's a really good one.
Yeah. And actually, and one other thing too, like I, for example, have a Moonlander keyboard that I've connect to Hammer Spoon to control my Mac. I don't really know Lua. It's a very easy language, but just one other thing to learn. But just by having a chat with Claude, I can be like, I want to accomplish this. I have Hammer Spoon. I have like this config for my Moonlander. And then it just like outputs the Lua I need. And all of a sudden I have more efficiencies for my keyboard,
Yeah.
which aren't technically an AI tool, but it was AI derived.
Super cool.
So Csongor, where can people keep up with you? Tell me about Bonsai Labs.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me on LinkedIn. And similarly is bonsai-labs.com is where you can find our company. And as you mentioned in the beginning, we work with private equity firms, work with some of the top 10 firms in the world, but also with more smaller and medium ones. And we are the nimble and fast-moving AI value creation partner for these firms, where we go through the portfolio companies and we just help them get to AI value as quickly as possible. So you can find me on LinkedIn, reach out anytime.
Thank you for listening to my conversation with Csongor. I had a blast talking with him. He clearly knows his stuff and has done this a lot of times to figure out the best ways to implement AI to solve these operational difficulties. But I'm curious from your end, what processes are you struggling to automate? Have you tried the tools we mentioned? Are there any others that you like? I'd love to hear from you. And I'd also love it if you'd like and subscribe to this video so we can get more of these conversations going, so we can actually start relaying more value to people so they can learn how to use AI to become more productive and efficient. I'd like to give a quick shout out to Tool Hive for supporting the show so I can have conversations like this, and I'll see you next week.